Hello and namaste to all of you. Today in UPSC GS series under sustainable development we are doing unit 11 global initiatives, and in global initiatives we are doing international agencies and roadblocks to global initiatives, summary of the unit 11. After that we have to do Unit 12, that is civil societies and community initiatives. The general instructions for the students are same, and that is they have to listen very carefully the audio number 17 on sustainable development and note down 10 words from the audio and write it in their notebook and think about intentionally on the words written by them. Point 4, International Agencies. United Nations Environment Program UNEP. The United Nations Environment Program UNEP, which was set up after the Stockholm Conference in 1972, is the principal UN body in the field of environment protection. UNEP assesses the state of the global environment, facilities, development of international environmental law, and coordinates the activities of the UN. UNEP plays a leading role in facilitating international negotiations on multilateral environmental agreements MEAS, MEAs, and also acts as a secretary to a number of MEAs. UNEP also hosts an annual global ministerial environment forum wherein environmental ministries from around the world meet to discuss issues of contemporary interest. Commission on Sustainable Development CSD. The UN Commission on Sustainable Development CSD was set up in 1992 as a follow-up mechanism to the Earth Summit. It is a functional commission of the Economic and Social Council ECOSOC and is composed of 53 members elected for 3 years terms by the ECOSOC from amongst UN members. The CSD acts as a catalyst for actions that support the objectives of sustainable development. Its mandate is to monitor and report on the implementation of the Earth Summit agreements such as Agenda 21 and the Rio Declaration at the local, national, regional, and international levels. After the World Summit on Sustainable Development in 2002, the CSD now also monitors the follow-up of the Johannesburg Plan of Implementation. CSD meets annually for a period of 2 to 3 weeks in order to address issues relating to sustainable development. The relationship between UNEP and CSD has not always been clear, although their mandates are clearly different. Global Environment Facility GEF. The Global Environment Facility GEF is an international funding mechanism that was set up in 1991 in order to facilitate environmental protection in the developing countries by funding products and programs in these countries. The GEF addresses 6 environmental problems that have been identified as critical for the global environment: loss of biodiversity, climate change, ozone layer depletion, degradation of international waters, desertification, and persistent organic pollutants (POPs). The GEF is the designated financial mechanism for the Convention on Biological Diversity 1992 and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change 1992. The GEF has given $4 billion in grants and generated $12 billion in co-financing with other sources to support over 1,000 projects in over 140 developing countries. In 2002 to 2003, a replenishment of $2.9 billion was agreed upon. The United Nations Development Program (UNDP), United Nations Environment Program (UNEP), and the World Bank are the implementing agencies of the GEF. That is, they manage the actual implementation of projects. The GEF Secretariat operates from Washington DC. There are 175 participant countries in the GEF, including India, which joined in 1994. The participating states meet at the GEF Assembly every 3 to 4 years to assess the progress of GEF projects. MEA secretariats. Apart from these institutions concerned with environmental protection in general, each of the MEAs is serviced by its own secretariat. Thus, the institutional structure underlying international environmental law comprises various MEA secretariats, each looking after their own sector of the environment. Other agencies also play a considerable role in environmental protection. These include the scientific and technical bodies. For instance, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC) studies the scientific aspects of climate change. Standard setting bodies such as the International Plant Protection Convention, the Alimentarius, Codex Alimentarius, and the Office of Epizootics are involved in standard setting relating to human, animal, and plant health. Also, institutions not directly aimed at environmental protection often have a role to play in environmental agenda. These include institutions such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization. Apart from the other specialized agencies of the UN system, international NGOs have also played an increasingly significant role in efforts towards environmental protection. These are discussed in detail in next audio. World Environment Organization World Environment Organization proposals for a new World Environment Organization (WEO) have been floated from time to time. At Rio Plus 5 in 1997, a proposal was put forth for improved cooperation among environmental organizations in the short term and in the long term for establishing an umbrella organization for the environment with UNEP at its center. These proposals stem from the need for environment and sustainable development to have a clear voice at the UN. Current discussion regarding a WEO aims to address the fragmentation of the current system and the imbalance between MEAs and the WTO. There may be a case for the creation of new global environmental organization of some kind, but many questions remain to be answered. It is not clear what the mandate of such an organization would be and whether it would represent any value addition to the existing system. The basic problems underlying global environmental policy, a lack of resources, lack of political will, and inadequate policy integration need to be addressed first. The, the finer the finer points of the debate are far from resolved, and much would depend on the level of political support. Most participants in this debate agree that whatever the shape of the institutional structure, the ultimate aim is an enhanced capacity for global environmental management. Point 5. Roadblocks to global initiatives. International initiatives for environmental protection face numerous challenges. The magnitude of the environmental problem and its acceleration at alarming rates means the legal system must respond quickly in order to be effective. For instance, problems such as ozone depletion and biodiversity loss have to be addressed before they spiral out of control and become irremediable. This is in keeping with the dictates of the preventive principle. Thus, international environmental law (IEL) must work within time constraints, ideally preventing the environmental problem from arising rather than addressing it later. However, it is often not possible to force quick solutions at the international level. The membership of the international community spans nation states at diverse levels of development and with diverse value systems and priorities. Thus, an international system which requires consensus of all participating member states often results in lowest common denominator solutions. Thus, a major challenge is to reconcile the assertion of sovereignty by member states with the growing environmental interdependence and the need for concerted action. Moreover, arriving at common solutions at the international level becomes even more difficult in the face of the North South divide that runs through international negotiations. The countries of the South have traditionally held the view that by introducing environmental requirements, the North is trying to pull up the ladder of development behind them. They are keen not to allow environmental protection run into green protectionism. Overcoming the north south divide is one of the major hurdles facing the international environmental protection regime. Many of the principles of IEL, although broadly acceptable in theory, are very difficult to implement in practice. For instance, it is not an easy task to define the parameters of a principle such as intergenerational equity or even sustainable development. For that matter, further principles such as the precautionary principle have engendered controversy owing to their potential for misuse as a justification for protectionist actions. The design of technological production systems are themselves roadblocks. These are open questions. Thus, it becomes important to identify the correct science underlying the global initiatives for sustainable development. The work of technical bodies and standard setting bodies sometimes comes under question. Expertise Moreover, scientific expertise is monopolized monopolized by the North, ensuring domination in these international scientific bodies. Ultimately, the provisions of legal instruments are also connected to the underlying scientific explanations. There are also problems relating to the global commons, oceans, space, and Antarctica. How are the global commons to be monitored and regulated? Being nobody's property may act as a disincentive for protection. Thus, a special thought needs to be given to the protection of the global commons. Also to be addressed is the free rider problem, wherein a state, without taking on any obligations, seek to reap the benefits of global initiatives towards environmental protection. The most challenging issue, however, is the reconciliation of environmental and development objectives. Any attempt at environmental protection is likely to entail a curb and redirection of activities aimed at economic growth, whereas the development imperative is central to the interest of all nation states. The real challenge is to design and promote a development trajectory that ensures a right balance between environmental protection and economic development. Summary of the global initiatives. The international community today accords a high priority to environmental protection in their agenda. This is evident by the effort that has been expended on various international conferences where political leaders from all over the world reiterated their concerns over and support for any attempt at environmental protection. There has also developed a large body of declarations and principles codifying these intentions. Moreover, nation states have gone further to undertake numerous legal obligations to ensure the protection of various sectors of the environment. This is evident from the large body of MEAs that have emerged in response to specific problems and the fact that this is the fastest growing branch of international law. Various institutions have been set up to ensure continued momentum towards environmental protection initiatives, although there is considerable debate over the strengths and weaknesses of these institutions. There has also been felt the need to set up a World Environment Organization. As evident from the above discussion, this large legislative and institutional mechanism must overcome many challenges in order to effectively achieve its objectives. Unit 12 of Sustainable Development, Civil Societies and Community Initiatives. Point 1, Introduction. Point 2, Rio, Seattle, Geneva. Point 3, Civil Society Initiatives in the regional context. Point 4, Country-based civil societies initiatives. And at the last, summary of the Unit 12 of Sustainable Development, and that is Civil Societies and Community Initiatives. Point 1, Introduction. In the previous units, we saw the initiatives taken by states nationally, regionally, and internationally towards sustainable development. However, there are times when the state is not the best judge of the most effective ways of ensuring sustainable development, and initiatives often come from the grassroots level workers engaged directly with the adversely affected people. So, a significant initiative towards sustainable development comes directly from the level. Community level. No surprisingly, it is seen that some of the initiatives that emanate from the community or civil society levels promise to be the most effective. In the last few decades, the role of civil society has also increased substantially in the field of environmental protection and sustainable development. A number of non-governmental organizations (NGOs) devoted exclusively to the cause of environmental protection and alternate modes of development have sprung up at the local, national, regional, and international levels and are contributing in various ways towards environmental friendly development. Point 2, Rio, Seattle, Geneva. The importance of the civil society in the decision making process in the environment and development related matters was first realized in the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, Rio 1992. This conference emphasized the involvement of the civil society for sustainable development according to Chapter 23 of Agenda 21, critical to the effective implementation of the objectives, policies, and mechanisms agreed to by the governments in all programs. Areas of Agenda 21 will be the commitment and genuine involvement of all social groups. One of the fundamental prerequisites for the achievement of sustainable development is broad public participation in decision making. Furthermore, the need for new forms of participation has emerged. Since the Rio Summit, the participation of the civil society has been growing increasingly, most notably of the NGOs in the World Development Policy matters. Their stance of opposing policies detrimental to the development of the society is gaining importance. The United Nations and the governments of both the northern and the southern countries are also recognizing the increasing activism of the NGOs and evident from the Fair World Trade Organization WTO ministerial talks held in Geneva and Seattle. Though WTO claims to be a democratic organization, civil society and even many governments consider that it excludes less developed countries from its negotiations and favors the interests of wealthy countries. Geneva 1998, the second WTO ministerial conference held in Geneva between 18 to 20 May 1998, was protested strongly by the NGOs. On the eve of the conference, around 10,000 people staged a peaceful demonstration in Geneva's streets protesting against the WTO, free trade, and globalization. These events brought out the dissatisfaction and anger of the civil society over the destabilizing, the destructive effects and globalization and liberalization. Their protest agenda was that the competition of the giant multinational firms over globalization would further accentuate accentuate developmental inequalities in the poor countries of the south and aggravate the already grim scenario of social and job insecurity. They demanded a review of the existing WTO agreements. On the same day, at a parallel NGO conference, many workshops were held highlighting the issues of unemployment, environmental destruction, farmers' problems, and marginalization of poor countries. Seattle 1999. The third WTO ministerial meeting held on 30th November also met with a similar fate as the Geneva meet. Before the meeting, around 350 organizations of the civil society came together and formed a coalition to campaign against any expansion of the powers of the WTO. The organizations issued statements where they said the Uruguay round agreements have functioned principally to reward open markets for the benefits of transnational corporations at the expense of national economies, workers, farmers, and other people and the environment. The WTO, according to the coalition, has contributed to the concentration of wealth in the hands of the rich, increasing poverty for the majority of the world's population and unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. They proposed that a review of existing agreements should be conducted with civil society's full participation. On 30th November 1999, tens of thousands of people and activists from all the world took to the streets in Seattle, Washington, disrupting the conference completely. Mass protests were also organized in India, France, and Geneva. In India, around 300 representatives of indigenous people handed an open letter to the director of the World Development Bank office in New Delhi protesting against the forestry program in Madhya Pradesh undertaken by the World Bank, under which tribals were driven out of their forests in the name of biodiversity conservation. Since the acknowledgement of the civil society's participation in the decision making process on environment and development issues in Rio, the civil society and community initiatives have come a long way actively and constructively participating in protest against the environmental and social injustices. Point 3. Civil society initiatives. Various prominent various prominent environmental movements have emanated at the grassroots level around the world, most relating to competing claims over natural resources such as forests, water sources, etc. Communities, community movements have also resulted from the violation of human and other rights due to displacement and environmental degradation caused by various development projects. Such movements often face serious resistance from vested, self-interested groups attempting to appropriate gains accruing from development projects. For instance, Chico Mendes of Brazil, who led a protest against Amazon deforestation, was assassinated in 1998. Ken Saro Boiwa of Nigeria, a writer protesting against the destruction of his tribe's lands by Western oil companies, was imprisoned and executed by the military dictatorship in 1995. Rodolfo Montiel and Teodoro Cabrera, Mexican farmers, were arrested for organizing a campaign to halt a commercial logging project, were tortured and sentenced to 6 years of jail before they were released in November 2001. Alexander Nikitin of Russia, who worked to promote the cause of nuclear safety, suffered a 5 year long prosecution for state treason before being acquitted in September 2000. Thus, environmental protection has often been taken up as a cause for the people in defiance of the government machinery or in opposition to powerful industries working with explicit or implicit support of the government. Such local initiatives have given rise to community organizations like the NGOs. NGOs have an increasing presence in making and implementing environmental policy and law. NGOs can and do deploy important skills and resources in the process of environmental protection. Contrary to the popular perception that NGOs are always critical of government initiatives, it is now widely recognized that NGOs also contribute positively in enhancing state initiatives towards environmental protection by working in constructive partnerships. States do not necessarily lose and in fact often gain through the enhancement of NGO access and participation. NGOs create linkages between global and local needs and actors. The active role of NGOs in the environmental protection is viewed by many as a welcome infusion of civic virtue into governance at all levels. NGOs have played a role in negotiation, monitoring, and implementation of environmental law and policy at all levels in their efforts to address the increasing complexity and severity of international environmental problems. States have incorporated NGOs because their participation enhances their ability to regulate. NGOs towards constructive participation provide policy advice, help in monitor commitments, minimize ratification risk, and facilitate linkages between governments and people. NGOs are thus becoming increasingly pervasive in environmental diplomacy and have been incorporated into what were previously state-only governance activities. There is now a provision for NGOs' participation in UN negotiations through a process of accreditation, accreditation while while accreditation Accreditation allows for a limited role for NGOs in the UN cooperative process. Many recent environmental treaties have gone much further by formally mandating or permitting NGO participation in some of their continuing activities. NGOs were only occasionally acknowledged in multilateral environmental treaties before the 1970s and rarely granted access. The major environmental treaties negotiated in the last decade, however, contain expansive rules for NGO participation, and NGOs have become very active and visible participants in many regime activities. Statements stipulating NGO participation have become a standard part of global environmental accords. NGO members are now even part of national delegations to the UN meetings. Still, it cannot be denied that NGO participation remains a privilege granted and mediated by states. The biggest benefit NGO participation provides is the information and grassroots perspectives on policy options. Through term governments have a chance to gain well-grounded, efficacious and creative policy advice from independent NGOs at the international and national levels. The International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources (IUCN), for instance, has helped draft or has provided a secretariat for several important international conventions. At the national level in India, for example, the recently adopted Biodiversity Act is almost completely built on inputs from a network of NGOs working across the country. NGOs contribute by pointing out logical or procedural inconsistencies in proposals under consideration. They have also brought forward expert independent legal judgments in cases of ambiguous interpretation. Thus, states can maximize policy information and analysis with the help of NGOs. Nearly every international agreement on environment and sustainable development release release on national self-reporting, given the fact that states, in order to project a good image, are likely to misrepresent and procrastinate in reporting. NGOs play a role in providing independent assessments of individual states, compliance records, data and information necessary for effective international cooperation. This is not to say, however, that NGOs are always ideal monitoring agents. Still, despite limitations, they do provide an additional form of monitoring mechanism. At the national level, the same monitoring or watchdog role is performed by NGOs in relation to enforcement of national law and policy. NGOs also play an important role of reporting and information dissemination on national and international initiatives. For instance, the Earth negotiations Bulletin provides daily bulletins of environmental negotiations. At the national level, NGOs play an effective role in information dissemination and generating awareness of environmental laws and policy. In addition, various NGOs provide short-term educational training in environmental issues and also organize awareness generation programs, thereby greatly extending the outreach of environmental initiatives. International environment regimes must have domestic support to succeed, and NGOs as interest groups can provide this support. Thus, NGOs are powerful domestic actors in many advanced industrial states. For domestic law and policy initiatives too, NGOs can contribute in raising popular support. They therefore play the role of bridging the distance between governments and the people. Of course, the weaknesses in the role of NGOs cannot be dismissed lightly. It cannot be denied that NGOs are fragmented groups of single issue activists, sometimes being guided by the interests of fund givers, lack public accountability or transparency. Increased participation of NGOs may at times impair regime effectiveness, create policy gridlock, and lead to poor outcomes. But these factors would probably not outweigh the huge contribution of environmental NGOs in the field of action research and analysis, education and information dissemination, advocacy and lobbying, legal intervention, inputs to policy making, institutions and implementation. Today, international NGOs are working on various aspects of environmental protection. Worldwide Fund for Nature International WWF International, a global organization that was set up in 1961 with the Secretariat in Switzerland, is one of the best known international NGOs with national offices spread across the globe. Although it started out was limited mandate focusing on conservation issues, it has now expanded its focus to almost all issues of environmental protection. It has also been an active participant in lobbying for the acceptance of inputs from NGOs in international disputes at the World Trade Organization. WWF has played a major role in the evolution of the international conservation movement. Friends of the Earth International FOEI, founded in 1971, started as a campaign on certain crucial issues such as nuclear energy and whaling. Green, Greenpeace, an international NGO with the activist mindset, has a presence in 40 countries across the world. Its campaigns include those on climate change, forests, oceans, nuclear threat, toxic chemicals, sustainable trade, etc. Greenpeace uses research, lobbying, and diplomacy as well as high profile on the streets events to draw attention to environmental problems and to raise the level and quality of public debate. Earthwatch Institute promotes sustainable conservation of natural resources and cultural heritage by creating partnerships among scientists, general public, educators and businesses. The Natural Resources Defense Council also works on a range of issues such as climate change and biodiversity conservation. The International Union for Conservation of Natural and Natural Resources IUCN, founded in 1948, has a membership of states as well as NGOs. It offers policy advice and technical support to various MEA secretariats. It plays a role in assessing new natural world heritage sites. It also monitors the state of the world's species in the IUCN Red List. IUCN provides technical support for drafting environmental laws and natural resource management strategies. These are just some of the well-known international NGOs working on a broad canvas for environmental protection. There are numerous others either working on specific issues such as conservation of particular species, management of hazardous waste, regulation of genetically modified organisms, etc., or in specific regions of the world. This was the audio number 17. In next audio, we will do the left topic of 12 civil society initiatives on sustainable development, and that is country based civil societies initiatives. Okay, thank you.